And I think the last thing I wanted to discuss was the statement by Israel. So let me put it on the screen. So Israel has been on a rampage because they want to construct a new settlement called E1. E1 is a settlement that has never been built in the outskirts of Jerusalem, because basically it cuts off the land in such a way that it would be impossible for Palestinians to drive from North West Bank to South West Bank without passing through an area now under the control of Israel, and so therefore not accessible to them. So the West Bank would be divided into North and South. Right? So there would not be a contiguous West Bank anymore. And if you don't have a contiguous West Bank, then you can't have a Palestinian state in the West Bank, right? So for decades, Israel has never dared to do this. But now that Trump is even saying that settlements are legal, they've sort of changed their tune. For a long time, Israel had a position on what was the West Bank. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. It's an old video, so I think you can listen to it here. Yeah, okay. So this is Israeli propaganda, okay, of the worst kind. So please do not think I endorse this. I don't. Here we go.
Often on the news, we hear the terms occupied territories, 67 borders, and illegal settlements. And the story we usually hear sounds very simple. During the Six-Day War, Israel captured the West Bank from the Palestinians, refused the United Nations' demand to retreat, and illegally built settlements. But
yes,
is that really the case?
Yes, it is.
Let's try to understand the situation a little bit better. We'll start with a simple but extremely important question. From whom did Israel capture the West Bank?
Palestine.
From the Palestinians? No. In 1967, there was no Arab nation or state by the name of Palestine.
Article 22 of the Covenant of the League of Nations says otherwise, my friend. It says explicitly that Palestinians are a nation.
Actually, was there ever? Israel took over the West Bank from Jordan in an act of self-defense, after Jordan joined a war launched by Egypt and Syria to destroy Israel.
That is also not true.
By the way, destroying countries is rather illegal. The United Nations back in 1967...
I'm sorry, was that a joke? Was that Danny Ayalon trying to be funny? Oh God.
The United Nations back in 1967... Oh, by the way, destroying countries is rather illegal. The United Nations back in 1967 rejected repeated Arab and Soviet attempts to declare Israel as the aggressor. Security Council Resolution 242 did not demand a unilateral Israeli withdrawal. Rather, the United Nations called for negotiating a solution which would leave Israel with secure and recognized boundaries.
Actually, it did require Israel to withdraw from the territories it had occupied. It's explicitly in Resolution 242.
In effect, defensible borders. But wait a second. What was Jordan doing in the West Bank in the first place? What was its legal justification?
It was preventing Israel from ethnically cleansing Palestinians.
Well, Jordan had the... You know what? It had no legal justification. Jordan simply occupied it during its previous attempt to destroy the newly established State of Israel in 1948, changing the commonly accepted name Judea and Samaria to the West Bank. But that did not really convince anybody. And almost no one recognized the legality of Jordan's occupation.
That is true.
Not even any of the other Arab states. So, if Jordan had no legal claim to the land, and a Palestine did not exist, whose territory is it? Let's go a little further back in time. Don't worry, not to the days of the Bible, only about 100 years. Until 1917, the Ottoman Empire occupied the whole region. After losing in World War I, the Ottomans relinquished their 500-year control to the Allied forces, which decided to divide the old empire into countries.
Why not?
Britain's foreign minister, Lord Balfour, recognized the Jewish people's historical right to their homeland. A small area, equivalent to about half of 1% of the Middle East, was designated for this purpose. Britain received a mandate from the League of Nations to promote the establishment of a Jewish homeland. But wait a second, do you realize what happened? The Jewish homeland originally included not only the West Bank, but also the East Bank of
This is Greater Israel crap here.
the Jordan River. I guess you cannot say the Jewish people have not accepted some painful compromises already. Anyway,
This is not yours!
the League of Nations recognition of a Jewish homeland, which includes the West Bank,
jokes
was
are the
reaffirmed
worst.
by the United Nations after the Second World War. With the British mandate ending, United Nations General Assembly Resolution 181 recommended the establishment of two states, one Jewish and one Arab. The Jews accepted it and went on to create the State of Israel, while the Arabs refused the
Wait, so if they accepted it, why don't they have the same borders as the Jewish state of the partition plan? Yeah? Why? Why is Jerusalem not internationalized if Israel accepted the partition plan?
compromise and launched a war to
is so
destroy the
racist.
newly established Jewish state.
Resolution 181, a non-binding recommendation.
Oh, this was added. This is recorded at a different time. Have you noticed? Listen to the audio.
Refused the compromise and launched a war to destroy the newly established Jewish state.
Resolution 181, a non-binding recommendation in the first place, remained with no legal standing.
Oh,
At
there
the
you
end
go.
of the war, a ceasefire line was formed. where the
Did you notice?
Israeli-
Did you notice what happened there? Did you notice what happened there? In Israel, there's confusion about the status of Resolution 181 and the partition plan. I've had this discussion with a lot of Israelis. They want to say that they accepted it, but that Israel is not based on that, because if it's based on that, then they lose the territory that they won in the War of 48, because it would be an illegal annexation. So what happened here is they recorded this video, and then probably some lawyer in the ministry said, "No, wait a minute, you cannot say that Israel was the result of Resolution 181, because then that means that half of our territory is illegally annexed." And so they had to record a writer in to the video, and that's why the audio is so weird. I'm sure. I mean, I'm speculating, but I'm sure that's what happened. So Max, that's the point. It doesn't mention Utiposidetis. You'll see.
181, a non-binding recommendation in the first place, remained with no legal standing.
At the end of the war, a ceasefire line was formed, where the Israeli and Arab forces stopped fighting. At the insistence of the Arab leaders, this line was defined as having no political significance. So, although this line is commonly referred to as the 1967 border, it is not from 1967, and it was never an international border. This is why a more exact legal definition for the West Bank, according to international law, is really the same as in so many other areas where there are or were territorial disputes, but which are not defined as occupied. For example, Zubarah, the Tams Islands, the Western Sahara, amongst many others. They're not considered occupied territories, but rather disputed territories.
The Western Sahara
So-
obviously is considered occupied.
Let's return for a moment to our illustration and examine the complete chain of events. Israel's presence in the West Bank is the result of a war of self-defense. The West Bank should not be considered occupied because there was no previous legal sovereign in the area.
Yes,
and
there was.
therefore, the real definition should be disputed territory. The 1947 partition plan has no current legal standing, while Israel's claim to the land was clearly recognized by the international community during the 20th century. That is why the presence and construction of Israeli settlements in the West Bank should not be considered illegal. These are not just my own opinions. They are based on conclusions made by world-renowned jurists like Professor Eugene Rastow, Justice Arthur Goldberg, and Stephen Schwebel, who headed the International Court of Justice.
Stephen Schwebel
So
said
what's
that
the solution for the dispute over the West Bank?
I don't think so.
Unfortunately, there is no magic solution. But the only way a solution will ever be reached is if we base our negotiations on legal and historical facts. So please, let's stop using the terms occupied territories and 67 borders. They're simply not politically correct.
Oh my god. Oh, in comparison with Stand With Us. Okay, oh, okay. Wow. They're not politically correct. Oh my god. He is so cringe and so horrible. Okay, but so compare this from 14 years ago, okay? This is 14 years ago. And now compare it to this tone here. Compared to this tone here. This is the latest freak out by the Israeli MFA on states being mad at the construction of E1. Right? Israel utterly rejects the statement of the foreign ministers regarding the approval of a construction plan near Jerusalem, its eternal capital, and rejects the attempt to impose foreign dictates upon it. The historic right of Jews to live anywhere on the land of Israel. Land of Israel, by the way, is this concept that is specifically different from the state of Israel. Land of Israel is the historical, biblical land that God promised Jewish people. Right? The historic right of Jews to live anywhere on the land of Israel, the birthplace of the Jewish people, is indisputable. There is no other nation in the world that has a stronger, longer standing, and better documented connection to its land than the Jewish people has to the land of Israel, and this connection and right do not require the affirmation of foreign governments. This is a change of tune. Compare this to Danny Ayalon, which specifically says, let's not go all the way back to the time of the Bible, right? And he starts doing this, like, I don't know, magician's trick of like invisibilizing Palestinians and going like, oh, we don't actually need to discuss about self-determination. Self-determination about whom? No, we don't need to talk about that. This is, there was no existing sovereign, so magically I'm just going to say that there's no occupation because reasons. Right? But at least it's not based on the Bible. This is based on the idea that the land of Israel, wherever its borders may be, listen to this, wherever its borders may be, theoretically the land of Israel in the Bible starts in the Euphrates River. So this is a biblical justification for why the West Bank and Gaza are not occupied. It's a scary turn. Right, because this is, settler, West Bank settler logic. This is Smotrich and Ben Gvir's language. This isn't Danny Ayalon talking. Right, this is a change of tune, and it's a concerning one. Right. Yes, Max says that historical and biblical connection is no legal right. Absolutely. Right. This is nothing. This means nothing under international law. Israel acts in accordance with international law. The establishment of a Jewish state in the Jewish people's ancient homeland, including the settlement by Jews on the land, was clearly recognized by the British Mandate, which was adopted by the League of Nations in 1922. The adoption of the 1917 Balfour Declaration and into the Mandate was expressly agreed in the 1920 San Remo Conference. Under the Mandate, the right of the Jewish people to build their national home extended to the entire territory of Mandatory Palestine. These rights were preserved under Article 80 of the UN Charter. I mean, first of all, the Balfour Declaration never said anything about a Jewish homeland needing to be sovereign. The 1939 British White Paper specifically said that the Jewish homeland in Palestine had been constructed already and did not need independence, because independence, trying to change a region that is Arab majority into a Jewish majority one, would be crazy and lead to violence. So no, this is a rereading, but at least it's based on law, right? I mean, it's bad law, but it's based on in the 20th century, not biblical times. There is no restriction for Arabs to reside in any part of the state of Israel, and the call to deny Jews and Jews alone the right to reside in certain areas of the state of Israel has a name: racism. So this is not true, because there is restrictions for Arabs to reside in parts of the state of Israel, because Palestinians who live in the West Bank and Gaza cannot move into Israel. So this is a patent lie. And Palestinians who live in Israel proper and have Israeli citizenship have their property rights curtailed as absentee property. That is, many Palestinians had to move from one part of Israel to another in 1948, right? And they are still considered as if they had left Israel. Their property is considered absent. They are considered absent property owners, even though they are there. And so their property can be taken then by Israel and given to Jewish citizens of Israel. So no, this is not true. There are restrictions for Arabs to reside in Israel, both from coming from the West Bank into Israel and within Israel itself. This is just not true. The Jewish people are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. At no point in history has there ever been a Palestinian state, and any attempt to argue otherwise has no legal, factual, or historical basis. This is crazy stuff, right? Because the Jewish people are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. First of all, there's that land of Israel again. First of all, it's one thing for Jewish people to say that they consider themselves, as a matter of identity, indigenous to the land of Israel or wherever you want to say, in the sense of like they consider themselves to originate from, they're originally from, in the same way as like I'm originally from Peru, right? And I made a video about this. You can go check it out. A video on indigeneity and Israel if you want to see it. It's on YouTube. But it's one thing to say I'm originally from Peru, I'm like quote unquote indigenous to Peru. It's another thing to say that I'm an indigenous people of Peru. Like I'm not a Quechua person. Like, and indigeneity requires the survival of modern colonialism for you to be able to be indigenous. This does not apply to Israeli Jews. It just doesn't, right? On the contrary, they are deploying their own coloniality on Palestinians, right? So they can be able to claim as an identity that Jews are indigenous to Israel, to the land of Israel, but they cannot say that they are an indigenous people, like an indigenous people or the indigenous people of the land of Israel, because that is a status under international law that does not correspond to Israeli Jews. It corresponds to people that survived modern colonialism, and Israeli Jews did not survive modern colonialism. On the contrary, they deployed it against Palestinians. So they are not an indigenous people. They are not the indigenous people of the land of Israel, even if they can say, as a matter of identity, that they are indigenous to Israel, originally from Israel, or whatever they want to call it. Regardless of the absurdity of the claim, it continues, regardless of the absurdity of the claim regarding the future consequences of the decision, Israel rejects the external attempt to impose a jihadist terror state in the heart of Israel. Like, this is incredibly stupid because it goes on to like conflate several things, right? On the one hand, jihadist terror state, the state of Palestine has not actually attacked Israel in decades, right? The state of Palestine in Ramallah. And honestly, to conflate Hamas as some kind of like religious fanatical group and not a group that is declaring to be engaged in a war of national liberation is kind of silly. Like, Hamas is not exactly ISIS. Like, I know this common trope of like Hamas is ISIS. They're really not. They would probably fight. Like, ISIS and Hamas are not friends, to the point where Israel is allied with ISIS in Gaza. You know, the Abu Shabaab gang, right, is operating on the side of Israel because Hamas would not see eye to eye with these people. Right? Whatever you want to think about Hamas, they are not like ISIS. So this conflation of the state of Palestine with Hamas and Hamas with ISIS is just disingenuous. They know it's false. Finally, the state of Israel is governed by a democratically elected government. It's not democratic, which acts to promote the interest of the citizens of Israel. That's not true. Netanyahu himself has said that his government is the government and his state is the state of Jewish Israelis, not Palestinian Israelis. The presumption of foreign governments to speak in the name of what is best for Israelis is an unacceptable pretension in international relations. Actually, human rights are not internal affairs, so you are obligated to speak about this. So essentially, every single paragraph in this statement is wrong or has a lie in it. But at the same time, it is extremely concerning to see the change in tone from Danny Ayalon, who is himself an extremist, 14 years ago, to this, where they're talking about being an indigenous people, where they're talking about the land of Israel, where they're talking about the Bible, where they're talking about like what do you call it, the you know, the here, the stronger, longer standing and better documented connection to its land. I mean, I want to deal in law, right? So it is concerning because it shows the radicalization of the Israeli position. a radicalization that is spearheaded by people like Ben Gvir and people like Smotrich. So I keep hearing Zionists telling me that actually Ben Gvir and Smotrich are not that important. You should not listen to what they're saying when you're trying to construct genocidal intent, because they don't matter. They're not in the war cabinet. They're not in the war cabinet. They're defining the entire policy of the government because Netanyahu needs them for his government not to collapse, to the point where they're grabbing the starting point of Dani Ayalon and shifting it, twisting it to adapt it to a Kahanist mindset, a fascist Zionist mindset based on religious fundamentalism, and calling it a foreign policy. It's really concerning because the radicalization that we're seeing in Israel is, at this point, with the things that Smotrich is saying, Nazi levels. Like Smotrich is saying Nazi level things. I shared one of his speeches recently where he was saying Nazi level stuff, and I just think it's like it's very concerning. It's very dangerous. It's a very dangerous moment because Israelis like to talk about how what Gaza needs is a de-radicalization process similar to the one that happened with the Nazis. Well, first of all, a lot of Nazis in Germany went right back into government, and then allied with Israel. There's a lot in just how bonkers and failed denazification was in Western Germany. But at the same time, they seem to not be realizing the level of radicalization of their own society that will also need a process of de-radicalization, probably through, not exactly through a failed process like denazification, but like through reconciliation and through like truth commissions and through like transitional justice mechanisms and through accountability mechanisms, because this is bonkers levels of radicalization, right? So Matteo Matt, thanks for following. Okay, well, we've been talking for about an hour and a half, and it's 6:50, so I'm gonna take advantage of the fact that I finished my rant on this and go make dinner because I can get a 10-minute head start.